Another thing we can use our knit leader for is to do Intarsia knitting. We can draw the Intarsia pattern on our mylar and place the mylar into our knit leader to determine the number of stitches that will be used for each color. Again, you need to make sure that your line is feeding in correctly. You will notice here that we have a line drawn up, this color being different than this color. And that's where we will roll to show you how to set up for Intarsia knitting. I will bring my carriage over to the left-hand side of the machine. I will place my Intarsia setting on by bringing the holding button over to the I position. In order to do that, I need to push my little button in here on the lower part of the carriage and push it over at the same time to the I setting. With the first pass, I will set up for the Intarsia knitting. As I take my carriage across, you will notice that all the needles came forward and the stitches are now behind their latches. I will also place both of my part buttons on. Now this is how we set up for Intarsia knitting with the latest models of the machines, your KK93 and your CompuKnit 3. With the other models, you have an Intarsia carriage that you place on the machine, take it across, again bringing these needles to this position. Once you have set up your needles for Intarsia knitting, then you will place your yarn on the floor in front of you instead of taking the yarn through the yarn guides. We have placed a yarn break to help us keep our tension good while we are knitting. The yarn break has a tension pole that allows it to guide the tensions for you, just as your tension rod on the antenna does. I will take the thread through the pole and make sure it is securely fastened. I am going to take my second color and place it into the next slot. At this point, I need to determine how many stitches will be of the blue color. Where you see the orange, I will be knitting with white. Where you see the blue here, I will be knitting with blue. So over to needle number 72, from my outside stitch, I will be knitting with white. Your tail must go cam side. Again, with the next color, I will place it across the rest of the needles, keeping the tail on the cam side. Either take a clothespin and hold down on these tails or hold firmly with your hand. Take your carriage across the machine and your stitches have knit. Now we will follow the mylar again to find out which stitches we are knitting on with each color. I am knitting up to needle number 70 with blue. Then bringing my finger and taking the yarn underneath that blue thread, my new white color yarn, I will lay it onto the next set of needles. Always make sure that you are actually crossing the two threads. Otherwise you will have a hole. Once you have crossed them and laid the needles into the latches, pull down on your thread to give good tension. Then knit one row back. At this point, again, I lay the white thread across the appropriate needles. I will be taking the white down to needle number 69. Then I will cross my white thread with the blue, and you will notice when using the yarn break for this purpose that in one direction the threads get crossed, but when I come back they are no longer crossed underneath. This is what gives it an easy go with your Intarsia knitting. I am now going down to needle number 68. See how going in this direction my threads have crossed. And now when I go back in the opposite direction, even though I am actually crossing them at the machine, they are not crossed down by the yarn break. And you continue in this manner, knitting up your Intarsia sweater following the color coding that you have drawn on your knit leader. This is a sample of a sweater that has been done on the knit leader with your Intarsia carriages. It is featured in one of the Knit King publications, as many of the sweaters that we have done in the various projects are. For information about this, you can contact Knit King.